The Tholian spacecraft plummeted through Earth's atmosphere, its alien pilot in the throes of an urgent biological imperative. As the ship careened towards a populated area, fate intervened, guiding it to crash land in a remote forest instead. The impact echoed through the trees, alerting nearby wildlife and human settlements alike. From the smoking wreckage emerged Rhaegar, a female Tholian. Her crystalline skin glimmered with distinct blue markings, a clear sign of her species' reproductive readiness. Disoriented and driven by primal urges, she stumbled away from her ruined vessel, her movements erratic and unpredictable. News of the crash spread quickly. The United Earth Defense Force mobilized, their response swift and efficient. Among the first dispatched to the scene was Harry Bell, a seasoned xenobiologist with years of experience studying extraterrestrial life forms. As military vehicles converged on the crash site, Harry's mind raced with possibilities and potential dangers. The forest clearing buzzed with activity as soldiers established a perimeter around the downed spacecraft. Weapons at the ready, they eyed the alien visitor with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Harry approached the scene, his trained eye immediately noting Rhaegar's distressed state and the telltale blue markings on her skin. Rhaegar noticed Harry's approach and attempted to communicate. Her translation device, damaged in the crash, emitted garbled sounds interspersed with fragments of coherent speech. Despite the language barrier, her urgency was palpable. Recognizing the delicate nature of the situation, Harry ordered the soldiers to stand down. He approached Rhaegar alone, his hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. As he drew closer, an unfamiliar scent filled the air. Rhaegar's pheromones, potent and alluring. The effect on Harry was immediate and unsettling. His thoughts became clouded, primal instincts awakening within him. He struggled to maintain his professional demeanor as the pheromones intensified, threatening to overwhelm his senses. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine cut through the air. The Tholian ship's distress beacon had activated, broadcasting a signal into the depths of space. Military analysts monitoring the situation from nearby command centers quickly intercepted and decoded the message. Their findings sent shockwaves through the chain of command. A Tholian fleet was en route to Earth, presumably to retrieve Rhaegar. As news of the impending arrival spread, Earth's governments convened in an emergency session. The possibility of an alien invasion loomed large, tensions rising as leaders debated their response. Meanwhile, at the crash site, Harry grappled with his own internal conflict. The xenobiologist in him knew that understanding Rhaegar's biological needs could be crucial to preventing an interstellar conflict. Yet as her pheromones continued to affect him, Harry found it increasingly difficult to separate his professional duty from his awakening desires. In that moment, standing between a distressed alien and a wary human military, Harry realized the weight of the situation. The fate of two species potentially rested on his ability to navigate this complex scenario. As Rhaegar's crystalline form shimmered in the forest light, Harry took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenging negotiations ahead. Negotiations that would test the limits of his scientific knowledge, diplomatic skills, and perhaps even his own humanity. Harry's internal struggle intensified as Rhaegar's pheromones continued to cloud his judgment. The forest clearing, once buzzing with military activity, now felt suffocating. He glanced at the distressed Tholian, her crystalline form shimmering with an otherworldly allure. "We need to move her," Harry said, his voice strained as he addressed the nearby officers. "This environment isn't suitable for proper assessment or containment." After a brief consultation with his superiors, Harry's request was granted. A secure facility nearby was quickly prepared to house their extraterrestrial visitor. As they began the transfer, Rhaegar's behavior grew increasingly erratic. Her movements became jerky and unpredictable, causing the military escort to tighten their formation around her. During the short journey, Harry found himself drawn closer to Rhaegar, as if pulled by an invisible force. The Tholian's distress was palpable, her translator device emitting sporadic bursts of garbled speech. Harry's scientific mind raced, trying to decipher the meaning behind her fragmented words. Upon arrival at the facility, Dr. Emily Jones, a renowned xenobiologist specializing in alien physiology, was already waiting. Her eyes widened as she took in Rhaegar's appearance, immediately noting the distinct blue markings on her crystalline skin. Fascinating, Dr. Jones murmured, approaching Rhaegar with cautious enthusiasm. I've never seen anything quite like this. As Dr. Jones began her examination, Harry briefed her on the situation. He explained Rhaegar's crash landing, the activation of the distress beacon, and the approaching Tholian fleet. Dr. Jones listened intently, her brow furrowing as she processed the information. Harry, I need to speak with you privately, Dr. Jones said after completing her initial assessment. They stepped into an adjacent room, leaving Rhaegar under the watchful eyes of the military personnel. Rhaegar's biology is rapidly destabilizing, Dr. Jones explained, her voice low and urgent. These markings, the erratic behavior, they're all signs of severe physiological stress. If we don't address her condition soon, she could face severe health complications, possibly even death. Harry's stomach churned at the news. The implications were staggering, not only for Rhaegar, but for the delicate diplomatic situation unfolding around them. As they discussed potential courses of action, a commotion erupted in the main chamber. Rhaegar had become increasingly agitated, her crystalline body emitting a high-pitched keening sound that set everyone on edge. Harry rushed back into the room, Dr. Jones close behind. Rhaegar's translator sparked to life, emitting fragments of desperate pleas. Help! Need! Human! Save us! Harry's mind raced, piecing together the disjointed words. A suspicion began to form. What if Rhaegar's presence on Earth wasn't accidental? He recalled the partial logs recovered from her ship and quickly accessed them on a nearby terminal. As he scanned the data, his eyes widened. Dr. Jones, look at this, he called out. These logs suggest Rhaegar intentionally sought out human contact during her mating cycle. But why? Before Dr. Jones could respond, an alarm blared throughout the facility. General Marcus Steele, the hardline commander overseeing the operation, strode into the room, his face a mask of unwavering grit. We've received new intelligence, Steele announced. The approaching Tholian fleet is significantly larger and more heavily armed than we initially believed. We're initiating preparations for a preemptive strike. Harry's heart sank. He knew that such action could lead to full-scale interstellar war. General, please, he began, but Steele cut him off with a sharp gesture. This isn't up for debate, Dr. Bell. Earth security is my primary concern. As tension filled the room, Dr. Jones called for their attention. I've made a startling discovery, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Tholian reproductive biology is remarkably compatible with human DNA. The implications are, well, they're extraordinary. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Harry's mind reeled with the possibilities. Could this be the key to preventing conflict? A way to satisfy Rhaegar's biological needs and potentially forge a peaceful connection between their species? Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and the lingering effects of Rhaegar's pheromones, Harry made a decision. He approached General Steele, his persistence evident in every step. General, I propose we attempt interspecies mating, Harry said, his voice steady despite the audacity of his suggestion. It could prevent both Rhaegar's deterioration and the impending conflict with the Tholian fleet. Steele's face contorted with a mix of shock and disgust. Absolutely not, he growled. That's a security risk and a compromise of human integrity. You're off this project, effective immediately. As Steele barked orders to have Harry removed, the xenobiologist's mind raced. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away, not when the fate of two species hung in the balance. In a split-second decision, Harry used his security clearance to override the lockdown protocols. He slipped into Rhaegar's containment area, his heart pounding. As he approached her, Rhaegar's translator finally stabilized, allowing clear communication between them. Why did you come to Earth? Harry asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rhaegar's crystalline form shifted, her blue markings pulsating with newfound intensity. Ancient legends, she replied, her voice a melodious hum. Tholian stories speak of humans' unique reproductive capabilities. We face extinction, trapped in a genetic bottleneck. You might be our salvation. Harry's breath caught in his throat as the full weight of the situation crashed down upon him. Outside, alarms blared, announcing the Tholian fleet's entry into the solar system. Time was running out. He stood at the precipice of a monumental decision. Follow his instincts and Rigor's plea for help, potentially averting an interstellar war but risking his career and possibly Earth's security, or adhere to military protocol and lose the chance for peaceful resolution. As Rigor's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of hope and desperation, Harry knew that his next action would shape the future of both their species. The door behind him burst open, General Steele's voice booming through the chamber. Harry's time to decide had run out. Out. In that moment, Harry made his decision. He stepped closer to Roger, his heart racing as he realized the magnitude of what he was about to do. "I'm here to help," he said softly, reaching out to touch Rhaegar's crystalline form. The contact sent a jolt through his body, intensifying the effects of her pheromones. Rhaegar's translator hummed to life. "Thank you," she replied, her voice a melodious vibration that seemed to resonate within Harry's chest. As they began to explore this unprecedented physical interaction, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Tholian fleet had entered Earth's orbit, their massive ships casting ominous shadows across the planet's surface. Inside the containment area, Harry and Rhaegar were oblivious to the chaos erupting around them. Guided by Rhaegar's instincts and Harry's scientific knowledge, they embarked on the early stages of the Tholian mating ritual. Their movements were tentative at first, a delicate dance of alien and human physiology. Dr. Emily Jones, monitoring the process remotely, watched in fascination as her instruments recorded a wealth of data. "Incredible," she murmured, her eyes darting between screens. "The compatibility is beyond anything we could have imagined." Suddenly, Rhaegar's body began to pulse with an intense blue light. A powerful wave of pheromones burst from her crystalline form, quickly filling the containment area and seeping into the ventilation system. The effect on the facility's staff was immediate and dramatic. Male personnel in particular found themselves overwhelmed by a surge of primal urges. Security guards abandoned their posts, technicians left their stations unattended, and chaos descended upon the once orderly facility. In the command center, General Marcus Steele stood rigid, his mind focused as he watched the situation unravel on multiple screens. Unlike the staff in the lower levels, he remained unaffected by the pheromone cloud. "This is what comes of letting scientists run the show," he growled, turning to his second-in-command. "Initiate the launch sequence for our advanced missile systems. We'll show these aliens what happens when they threaten Earth." As the general's orders were carried out, a new player entered the cosmic stage. Admiral Zorna, the composed female commander of the Tholian fleet, sat in her command chair, her crystalline form radiating an aura of authority. "Status report," she demanded, her voice clear and firm. A subordinate responded quickly. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface. Primitive projectile weapons, but potentially damaging in large numbers." Zorna's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. "Evasive maneuvers," she ordered, "and open a channel to their leaders. This is clearly a defensive reflex, not an act of war." Back in the facility, the mating process between Harry and Rhaegar reached a critical juncture. The blue light emanating from Rhaegar's body intensified, bathing the containment area in an otherworldly glow. Electrical systems throughout the building began to malfunction, plunging sections into darkness while others blazed with sparks. Dr. Jones, struggling to maintain her composure amidst the growing chaos, noticed a group of affected male staff members attempting to break into the containment area. Their eyes were wild, their movements erratic as they pounded on the reinforced door. No, she muttered, her fingers flying across her console. With a few quick commands, she overrode the facility's ventilation system, initiating an emergency purge. Clean air began to flood the building, slowly dispersing the pheromone-laden atmosphere. As the pheromone effects began to dissipate, staff members shook their heads in confusion, slowly regaining their senses. However, the temporary lapse in security had allowed several unauthorized personnel to access restricted areas, including the main control room. In Earth's orbit, Admiral Zorna watched as her fleet gracefully evaded the incoming missiles. Her mind raced, calculating the potential outcomes of this precarious situation. With a decisive nod, she rose from her command chair. "Prepare my personal shuttle," she announced. "I'm going down there myself. This situation requires a direct approach. As Zorna's shuttle began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, the energy emanating from Harry and Rigor's union reached its zenith. The containment area was engulfed in a blinding flash of blue-white light, overloading every sensor and camera trained on the room. When the light faded and the systems rebooted, Dr. Jones gasped in shock. The containment area was empty. Harry and Rigor had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a faint, shimmering residue on the floor. In the command center, General Steele barked orders, trying to regain control of the situation. Unauthorized personnel were being rounded up, but the damage to their defensive coordination was already done. As Zorna's shuttle streaked across the sky, Earth teetered on the brink of interstellar conflict. The missing scientist and his alien companion, the approaching Tholian admiral, and the aggressive human general all held pieces of a puzzle that would determine the fate of both species. In the eerie quiet following the chaos, Dr. Jones stared at the empty containment room, her mind turning with questions. Where had Harry and Rigor gone? What did their disappearance mean for the future of human-Tholian relations? And perhaps most pressingly, how would they explain this to the rapidly approaching Tholian fleet? As alarms continued to blare and orders were shouted across the facility, the true test of humanity's ability to navigate this cosmic crossroads was about to begin. As the blinding flash of light faded from the containment area, Dr. Emily Jones blinked rapidly, her eyes adjusting to the sudden darkness. The room where Harry and Rigor had been moments ago now stood empty, save for a faint, shimmering residue on the floor. "What in the world?" she muttered, her fingers flying across her console. Alarms blared throughout the facility as she initiated a full-spectrum scan of the area. The results flashed across her screen, confirming her suspicions. Harry and Rigor had vanished without a trace. Dr. Jones wasted no time. She immediately contacted the facility's central command, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is Dr. Jones. We have a Code Omega situation. Subjects Harry Bell and Rigor have disappeared. I'm initiating a global search using our advanced tracking systems." As she spoke, her fingers danced across the keyboard, activating a network of satellites and ground-based sensors designed to detect even the faintest traces of Tholian energy signatures. The search expanded outward from the facility in concentric circles, covering more ground with each passing second. Meanwhile, outside the facility, a tense scene unfolded. Admiral Zorna's shuttle, sleek and crystalline, descended from the sky with an otherworldly grace. It touched down on a grassy field adjacent to the complex, its engines humming with a low melodious tone. General Marcus Steele stood at the head of a heavily armed contingent of Earth's military forces. His eyes hardened as he watched the shuttle's hatch open, revealing the tall, imposing figure of Admiral Zorna. Her crystalline form caught the sunlight, refracting it in mesmerizing patterns. "Hold your positions," Steele barked to his troops, his hand resting on his sidearm. "No one fires unless I give the order." Admiral Zorna stepped forward, her movements fluid and precise. She raised her hands in a gesture of peace, her voice clear and resonant as she addressed the gathered humans. "People of Earth," she began, "I come in peace and with urgent purpose. The situation between our species is far more complex than you realize. I request an immediate audience with your leaders to discuss matters of utmost importance to both our worlds." General Steele's eyes narrowed, his military training warring with his curiosity. After a moment of tense silence, he nodded curtly. "Very well, Admiral, but you'll be under heavy guard at all times." As Zorna was escorted into the facility, Dr. Jones received an urgent communication. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "General Steele," she called out, her voice echoing through the command center. "I've made a breakthrough. The data from Harry and Rigor's partial mating process, it's extraordinary." All eyes turned to Dr. Jones as she explained her findings. Successful human-Tholian reproduction could potentially create a hybrid species with enhanced abilities. The implications for both our races are, well, they're staggering. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, some expressing excitement, others voicing concern. General Steele raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "Dr. Jones, are you certain about this?" Before she could respond, The facility's tracking system emitted a series of rapid beeps. Dr. Jones rushed to the console, her heart racing. "We found them," she announced. "Harry and Rager, they're in a rainforest, thousands of miles from here." As the implications of this discovery sank in, Admiral Zorna stepped forward. "We must retrieve them immediately," she said, her voice carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "I propose a joint human-Tholian expedition. Time is of the essence." General Steele's face twisted into a scowl. "Now wait just a minute." "General," Dr. Jones interjected, her voice firm. "With all due respect, this is our best chance to understand what's happening. I volunteer to lead the human contingent of this expedition." After a tense moment, Steele nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but I want hourly reports, and at the first sign of trouble, you pull out. Understood?" As preparations for the expedition began in earnest, the scene shifted to the dense, humid rainforest where Harry and Rieger had materialized. The air was thick with the sounds of exotic birds and the rustling of leaves. Harry blinked, disoriented by the sudden change in surroundings. "Rager?" he called out, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of wildlife. "Are you okay?" A soft glow emanated from behind a large, broad-leafed plant. As Harry pushed it aside, his jaw dropped in astonishment. There stood Rieger, but not as he had last seen her. Her crystalline form had morphed, taking on a more humanoid appearance. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, and her eyes, once alien and inscrutable, now held a warmth and depth that took Harry's breath away. "Harry," Rieger's voice was melodious, tinged with a hint of confusion and wonder. "What has happened to me?" As Harry approached her, he felt the pull of her pheromones intensify. The partial mating process they had begun in the facility seemed to have accelerated the changes in Rieger's physiology, adapting her more closely to Earth's environment. I'm not sure," Harry admitted, his scientific mind racing to understand the transformation before him. "But you're beautiful." Rieger reached out, her fingers intertwining with Harry's. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through both of them, igniting a primal urge that threatened to overwhelm their rational minds. "Harry," Rieger whispered, her newly formed lips inches from his. "We must complete what we started. The fate of my people depends on it." As they stood there, locked in an embrace that bridged two species, the sound of distant engines broke through the forest canopy. The expedition team was closing in, racing against time and biology. Harry and Rieger looked at each other, understanding the weight of the decision before them. Complete the mating process and potentially change the course of human and Tholian history? Or wait for the expedition to reach them and face the uncertain consequences of their actions? The jungle seemed to hold its breath as Harry opened his mouth to speak, the future of two worlds hanging on his next words. Harry's voice caught in his throat as he gazed into Rieger's eyes, the weight of their decision pressing upon them. Before he could respond, a distant hum pierced the jungle's cacophony, growing louder with each passing moment. "They're coming," Rieger whispered, her newly formed lips curving into a concerned frown. Harry nodded, his mind racing. "We need to move. We can't let them interrupt what we've started." As they delved deeper into the lush foliage, Dr. Emily Jones and her team touched down at the edge of the rainforest. She stepped out of the transport, her eyes scanning the dense vegetation before them. Beside her, Krell, the Tholian scientist, adjusted a handheld device. "The energy signature is strong," Krell announced, his crystalline form shimmering in the dappled sunlight. "They can't be far." Dr. Jones nodded, her expression determined. "Let's move out. Remember, approach with caution. We don't know what state they're in." As the team ventured into the jungle, their equipment began to falter. Screens flickered, compasses spun wildly, and communication devices emitted nothing but static. "What's happening?" one of the team members asked, frustration evident in his voice. Dr. Jones frowned, examining her malfunctioning tablet. "Some kind of electromagnetic interference. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Krell's eyes narrowed as he studied his own device. "This energy, it's similar to Tholian technology, but far more potent. We must proceed on foot." As the expedition team struggled through the dense undergrowth, Harry and Rhaegar pushed deeper into the heart of the rainforest. Their newly formed psychic bond pulsed with each step, guiding them towards an unknown destination. "Harry," Rhaegar said, her voice tinged with wonder, "I can sense them. The humans, the Tholians, their emotions, their intentions. It's overwhelming." Harry squeezed her hand, marveling at the warmth of her touch. "I feel it too. It's like we're connected to everything around us." They pressed on, the jungle seeming to part before them. As they entered a small clearing, both gasped in awe. Before them stood the crumbling remains of an ancient structure, its weathered stones covered in vines and moss. "What is this place?" Harry breathed, his scientific curiosity piqued. Rhaegar stepped forward, her eyes fixed on a small object nestled among the ruins. "Look, Harry, there's something here." As they approached, they saw a small crystalline structure, its facets gleaming despite the layers of dirt and age. The moment Rhaegar's fingers brushed against its surface, the artifact began to glow, pulsing in sync with their heartbeats. "It's Tholian," Rhaegar whispered, her eyes wide with recognition. "But how? How could it be here?" Before Harry could respond, the artifact's glow intensified, bathing them in a soft blue light. Energy crackled around them, the air thick with potential. "Rhaegar," Harry said, his voice husky with emotion and urgency, I think it's time. We need to complete the mating process." Rhaegar nodded, her form shimmering as she drew closer to Harry. As their bodies intertwined, the artifact's energy surged, enveloping them in a cocoon of light. Miles away in a high-security conference room, the diplomatic meeting between Earth's leaders and the Tholian delegation erupted into chaos. Alarms blared as screens lit up with reports of strange energy signatures appearing across the globe. Admiral Zorna's crystalline form stiffened as she recognized the pattern. "Impossible," she muttered, her voice barely audible above the commotion. General Steele's hand slammed down on the table. "What is this?" he demanded. "Is this some kind of Tholian trick?" Zorna turned to face him, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "These are ancient Tholian beacons, placed on your world millennia ago by my ancestors. But they were never meant to activate. Something has triggered them." The room fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. A shared history, lost to time, now resurfacing with potentially catastrophic consequences. General Steele's face hardened. "I'm initiating a global military response. We can't risk—" "Wait!" A group of scientists and diplomats surged forward, led by Dr. Amelia Chen, a renowned xenobiologist. "General, please, we can't rush into this. The potential benefits of cooperation—" "Benefits?" Steele scoffed. "They've hidden technology on our planet for thousands of years, and you want to talk about benefits?" As the argument escalated, the scene in the rainforest reached its climax. Dr. Jones and her team finally broke through into the clearing, just in time to witness a blinding flash of light emanating from where Harry and Rhaegar stood entwined. When the light faded and their vision cleared, the expedition team found themselves face to face with a being unlike anything they had ever seen. Where Harry and Rhaegar had stood, there was now a single entity, a perfect blend of human and Tholian characteristics. "My name is Hargur," the being spoke, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. "And I have much to tell you about the true history of our peoples." As Hargur began to share the revelations of the shared ancestry between humans and Tholians, the ancient beacons across the planet surged with renewed energy. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, long-dormant Tholian devices stirred to life, their purpose about to reshape the very nature of life on Earth. The world stood on the brink of transformation, with Hargur at the center of a storm that would determine the fate of two civilizations. As the hybrid being prepared to leave the jungle with the expedition team, the true challenge was only beginning, to bridge the gap between two worlds and prevent a war that could destroy them both. As Hargur prepared to leave the jungle with the expedition team, the ground beneath their feet trembled. Dr. Jones's communicator crackled to life, breaking through the electromagnetic interference that had plagued their equipment. "Dr. Jones, this is General Steele. Report immediately. The situation has escalated beyond our control." The urgency in Steele's voice sent a chill down Emily's spine. She glanced at Hargor, whose iridescent form seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "We need to move now," she said, her voice tight with tension. As they raced through the dense foliage, Hargor's presence seemed to part the vegetation, creating a clear path for the team. The hybrid being's eyes darted from side to side, taking in information at an inhuman rate. "I sense great disturbance," Hargor said, their voice resonating in the minds of the team. "The world is changing rapidly." They emerged from the jungle to find their transport surrounded by a crowd of panicked civilians. News broadcasts blared from portable devices, describing scenes of chaos erupting in major cities worldwide. Tholian structures are emerging in downtown New York. Protests turn violent in London as alien technology activates. Military forces mobilize to contain the spread of unknown energy signatures. As the team boarded the transport, Krell, the Tholian scientist, stumbled. His crystalline form seemed to shimmer and flex in ways that defied his species' normal rigidity. "What's happening to me?" he gasped, his voice tinged with fear and wonder. Dr. Jones rushed to his side, her scientific curiosity overriding her concern. She noticed similar changes occurring in the human members of the team. Their movements were quicker, more precise, and their eyes seemed to gleam with heightened awareness. "It's Hargor," she breathed, realization dawning. "Their energy signature is affecting us all." As the transport lifted off, Hargor placed a hand on the viewport. The hybrid's touch sent a surge of energy through the craft, enhancing its speed and capabilities. They streaked across the sky, racing against time to reach the main facility. Dr. Jones hunched over her tablet, analyzing the data streaming in from Hargor's unique biology. Her eyes widened as the implications became clear. "This is incredible," she murmured. "Hargor's DNA contains a key that could unlock dormant genes in both humans and Tholians. We're looking at the potential for a new stage of evolution for both species." The transport suddenly lurched, alarms blaring. Through the viewport, they saw a group of heavily armed individuals on the ground, led by a stern-faced man in a colonel's uniform. "Attention, unidentified aircraft," a voice crackled over the comm system. "This is Colonel Jake Hawkins. You are ordered to land immediately and surrender the alien hybrid." Hargor's eyes narrowed, and a shimmering force field enveloped the transport. Bullets pinged harmlessly off the energy barrier as they continued their flight. "They fear what they do not understand," Hargor said, their voice tinged with sadness. As they approached the facility, a new threat emerged. A squad of Tholian warriors materialized in the sky around them, their crystalline forms glinting in the sunlight. "Admiral Zorna sent us to ensure your safe arrival," one of the warriors communicated telepathically. The two groups converged on the landing pad outside the facility, creating a volatile mix of human extremists and Tholian protectors. As the transport touched down, Hargor stepped out, their presence immediately intensifying the energy in the air. Colonel Hawkins raised his weapon. "Stand down and surrender the hybrid," he shouted. The Tholian warriors formed a protective circle around Hargor and the expedition team. Energy crackled between the opposing forces as tensions reached a breaking point. Suddenly, Hargor's form began to glow intensely. The hybrid raised their arms, and a wave of energy pulsed outward. Across the globe, ancient Tholian artifacts buried deep within the earth resonated in response. The resulting network of energy briefly disrupted all electronic communications, revealing hidden Tholian structures rising from the ground. In the command center, General Steele watched in horror as holographic displays showed Tholian technology activating worldwide. His face hardened as he made a fateful decision. "Launch the nuclear strike," he ordered, his voice cold and resolute. "Target the largest concentration of Tholian structures in the Sahara." Outside, the conflict had erupted into chaos. Human and Tholian forces clashed, with Hargor at the center, desperately trying to maintain a protective barrier around the expedition team. A deafening roar filled the air as a nuclear missile streaked across the sky, its fiery trail visible to all. Hargor's eyes widened in alarm, recognizing the imminent catastrophe. In that moment, Hargor closed their eyes and reached out with their mind, tapping into the global network of Tholian energy. The hybrid's form began to glow with an intensity that forced everyone to shield their eyes. With a gesture of immense power, Hargor created a massive force field that enveloped the entire planet. The nuclear missile collided with the energy barrier, exploding harmlessly in the upper atmosphere. The shock wave rippled across the force field, dissipating into a spectacular light show that illuminated the sky. The display of power brought the fighting to an abrupt halt. Humans and Tholians alike stood in awe of Hargor's abilities. Taking advantage of the momentary peace, Hargor reached out telepathically, sharing visions of a possible future with all those present. Images flooded their minds, humans and Tholians working side by side, their unique abilities complementing each other. They saw a world transformed, not into an alien landscape, but into a harmonious blend of both species' needs. The terraforming process, guided by their combined knowledge, created an environment where both could thrive. As the visions faded, Colonel Hawkins lowered his weapon, his hands shaking. "Stand down," he ordered his troops, his voice barely above a whisper. The Tholian warriors, receiving new commands from Admiral Zorna, also ceased their aggressive stance. Dr. Jones stepped forward, her eyes shining with hope. "We need to get to the command center. General Steele needs to see this, to understand what's really happening." Hargor nodded, their forms shimmering with barely held-back energy. "Yes, but we must hurry. The changes occurring across the planet require immediate attention." As they approached the facility's entrance, they found it sealed tight, the building in complete lockdown. Hargor placed a hand on the reinforced door, concentrating deeply. The Tholian technology within the structure responded to their touch, overriding the lockdown protocols. The doors slid open, revealing a corridor leading to the command center where General Steele and the world leaders awaited. Hargor took a deep breath, preparing for the most crucial confrontation yet, one that would determine the fate of both humans and Tholians. "Are you ready?" Dr. Jones asked, placing a supportive hand on Hargor's shoulder. Hargor nodded, their eyes reflecting a mix of purpose and hope. "The future of both our peoples depends on what happens next. We must succeed." With that, they stepped into the facility, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their quest to forge a new path for humans and Tholians alike. As the doors to the command center slid open, Hargor stepped inside, followed closely by Dr. Jones and the others. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the human-Tholian hybrid. General Steele's hand instinctively moved towards his sidearm, while other world leaders leaned forward in their seats. A mix of fear and curiosity etched on their faces. Hargor's iridescent form seemed to pulse with energy, casting shimmering patterns on the walls. Without a word, the hybrid closed their eyes, concentrating deeply. Suddenly, the minds of everyone present were flooded with vivid images and sensations. They saw Earth transformed, lush forests stretching across once barren deserts, crystal spires rising alongside human cities, and most strikingly, humans and Tholians working together in perfect harmony. The vision shifted, showing the devastating consequences of continued conflict. Cities reduced to rubble, the planet's ecosystem collapsed, and both species on the brink of extinction. As the telepathic projection faded, gasps and murmurs filled the room. Dr. Jones, who had been monitoring her tablet throughout the demonstration, spoke up urgently. "General Steele, everyone, you need to see this." She projected her screen onto the main display, showing real-time data from global monitoring stations. "The Tholian terraforming devices have entered a new phase. The changes to our environment are accelerating at an unprecedented rate." The command center's windows offered a stark visual confirmation of her words. Outside, vegetation was growing at an impossible speed, trees shooting up from barren ground in a matter of minutes. The sky had taken on a subtle purple hue, a beautiful yet alien sight that sent a shiver through the assembled leaders. Dr. Jones continued, her voice filled with excitement and awe. "This isn't just terraforming. It's creating a hybrid environment. The atmospheric composition, the new plant species emerging, they're all designed to support both human and Tholian physiology. And there's more." She paused, looking directly at General Steele. "Early data suggests this new environment could significantly enhance human capabilities while allowing Tholians to exist here without protective gear." Steele's eyes narrowed. "That's a pretty claim, Doctor. But how can we be sure these changes won't ultimately harm humanity?" Hargor stepped forward, their crystalline features catching the light. Perhaps a demonstration is in order, General. The hybrid turned to a seemingly blank wall and placed their hand against it. The surface shimmered, revealing a hidden Tholian device. As Hargor activated the device, a wave of energy pulsed through the room. The world leaders gasped as they felt the changes in their bodies, heightened senses, a surge of strength, and a clarity of mind they had never experienced before. One of the European leaders, who had entered the room with a noticeable limp, stood up in shock. "My arthritis! The pain is gone!" He flexed his fingers in disbelief. The President of the United States, her eyes wide with wonder, spoke next. "I can see every detail in this room with perfect clarity. It's as if I've been given new eyes." As the leaders marveled at their temporarily enhanced bodies, a commotion outside caught their attention. Admiral Zorna's personal shuttle was landing on the facility's roof. Moments later, the Tholian leader entered the command center, her crystalline form radiating an aura of power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Zorna approached Hargor, and the two began a silent, intense telepathic exchange. The Tholian artifacts throughout the facility resonated in response, creating a mesmerizing display of light and energy that held everyone transfixed. Suddenly, Hargor's eyes snapped open, filled with a new understanding. "We have all been blind to the truth," they said, their voice resonating with newfound knowledge. "Humans and Tholians are not separate species destined for conflict. We are two branches of the same evolutionary tree, separated millions of years ago by a cosmic catastrophe." The hybrid went on to explain the ancient history of Earth as a colony world, the cataclysm that nearly wiped out all life, and the Tholian exodus that followed. As Hargor spoke, holographic images appeared in the air, showing the shared ancestry of humans and Tholians. The revelation stunned the room into silence, but before anyone could fully process this information, urgent reports began flooding in from around the globe. Dr. Jones, monitoring the incoming data, gasped. "It's happening everywhere. Spontaneous human-Tholian hybridization in areas of high Tholian energy concentration." Screens lit up with images from around the world, humans transforming before bewildered onlookers, their bodies taking on Tholian characteristics. These new hybrids displayed enhanced abilities, effortlessly manipulating the rapidly changing environment around them. General Steele's face hardened as he watched the scenes of chaos unfolding in major cities. "This is exactly what I feared. We're losing control of the situation. These hybrids could be a threat to national security." Hargor turned to face the assembled leaders, their form glowing with intensity. "We stand at a crossroads. The truth of our shared history and the potential of our combined future must be known to all. I propose using the global Tholian energy network to broadcast a telepathic message to every human and Tholian on Earth." The room erupted in debate. Some leaders saw the broadcast as the only way to prevent widespread panic and violence. Others feared the consequences of such an invasive action. As Hargor prepared to initiate the broadcast, General Steele made his move. "I can't allow this," he growled, activating a hidden console. Alarms blared as the facility's defense systems came online, energy weapons powering up and targeting both Hargor and Admiral Zorna. Containment fields began to form around the hybrid and the Tholian leader. The world leaders looked on in shock, torn between intervening and allowing Steele's protocol to play out. Hargor stood at the center of the chaos, facing an impossible choice: initiate the global broadcast and risk being incapacitated by Steele's defenses, or focus on neutralizing the immediate threat and potentially lose the chance to reach the entire world at once. Time seemed to slow as Hargor weighed the options, the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance. The hybrid's form pulsed with terrifying energy, ready to be channeled into action. But which action would shape the future of Earth and its people? In that fraction of a second, as energy weapons powered up around them, Hargor made their choice. Their crystalline form pulsed with an otherworldly glow, and they reached out with their mind, tapping into the vast network of Tholian technology that now spanned the globe. "No!" General Steele shouted, but his words were lost in the sudden surge of power that filled the room. Hargor's body became a conduit for the Tholian energy, their forms shimmering and distorting as they channeled an unimaginable amount of power. Simultaneously, a protective field sprang up around them, and Admiral Zorna deflecting the facility's defense systems with ease. The world leaders gasped as beams of energy dissipated harmlessly against Hargor's shield. The hybrid's eyes blazed with an inner fire, their voice resonating with a power that seemed to shake the very foundations of reality. "We are one," Hargor intoned, their words carrying far beyond the confines of the command center. In an instant, the accumulated knowledge and understanding of both humans and Tholians poured through Hargor and into the global network. A wave of light erupted from their form, spreading outward at an impossible speed. It raced across continents and oceans, enveloping the entire planet in a matter of seconds. Across the globe, humans and Tholians alike froze in their tracks as their minds were flooded with visions and sensations. In crowded city streets and remote villages, in Tholian encampments and human strongholds, everyone experienced a moment of shared consciousness. They saw the ancient history of Earth unfold before them, a thriving colony world, home to the ancestors of both humans and Tholians. They witnessed the cosmic catastrophe that tore their people apart, forcing the Tholians to flee while the remaining population struggled to survive on a devastated planet. As the visions faded, people found themselves changed. Humans felt a newfound strength coursing through their bodies, their senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. Tholians experienced a rush of emotions they had never known before, their rigid forms becoming more fluid and adaptable. In the command center, General Steele staggered back, his face a mask of shock and confusion. The weapon he had been reaching for clattered to the floor, forgotten. What have you done?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Hargor turned to face him, their forms still pulsing with residual energy. "I have shown the truth," they replied simply. "To everyone." The world leaders, who moments ago had been paralyzed with indecision, now moved with purpose. The President of the United States was the first to speak, her voice filled with a new conviction. "Shut down the defenses," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to our military command. We need an immediate ceasefire, worldwide." Similar scenes played out across the globe as leaders grappled with their newfound understanding. In mere minutes, conflicts that had seemed intractable began to wind down, replaced by a sense of shared purpose and unity. Admiral Zorna stepped forward, her crystalline form now shimmering with an inner light that seemed almost human. She approached Hargor, extending a hand in a gesture that was both alien and familiar. As their hands touched, a visible spark of energy passed between them, rippling through the air and causing the assembled humans to gasp in wonder. It was more than a simple handshake. It was the forging of a new pact, a merging of two peoples who had once been one. "The path ahead will not be easy," Zorna said, her voice carrying a new depth of emotion. "But together, we can face any challenge." Hargor nodded, a smile playing across their features. "Indeed, the adventure is just beginning." Over the next few days, the full extent of the changes became apparent. Humans found themselves capable of feats they had never dreamed possible, their bodies and minds evolving at an unprecedented rate. Tholians, freed from the constraints of their rigid society, began to explore new forms of expression and creativity. In a hastily convened global summit, representatives from both species gathered to discuss the way forward. The decision was unanimous. A new capital would be built, a shining symbol of unity and cooperation. As the sun rose on the first day of construction, Hargor stood at the edge of the vast construction site. The land around them was transforming before their eyes, a perfect blend of Earth's natural beauty and Tholian efficiency. Dr. Jones approached, her eyes wide with wonder as she surveyed the scene. "It's incredible," she breathed. "I never thought I'd see anything like this in my lifetime." Hargor turned to her, their expression thoughtful. "This is just the beginning, Doctor. The universe is vast, and now, united, we have the power to explore it together." As they spoke, a group of children, some fully human, some Tholian, and some displaying characteristics of both, ran past, laughing and playing together without a hint of the mistrust that had divided their parents' generations. Hargor watched them go, a sense of satisfaction settling over them. The journey that had begun with Rhaegor's arrival on Earth had led to this moment, a future brighter than either humans or Tholians could have imagined alone. With a final glance at the rising sun, Hargor turned and walked towards the bustling construction site. There was work to be done, a new world to build, and endless possibilities to explore. The adventure that had started with an alien girl's mating season had transformed into something far greater. The birth of a new, unified species ready to take its place among the stars.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.